Hey guys, welcome back to Everything Wrong with RWBY. This is not a cinemasins parody or anything related to that. It's more inspired by Civets. I don't think that's how you say it. His Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything Wrong With. It's more like that. I don't know why I named it this. I just did. So, if you hadn't watched Volume 6, I did this in Volume 6, and what I did was I went through each episode, and I just talked about them, and talked about criticisms, and also things I liked. So despite the name, I do talk about a lot of positive things, and you'll find later on I do have a lot of nice things to say about this. So today we're just going to talk about Volume 7, and of course because Volume 7 is not short, and because I have a lot to say, this is multiple parts. And I should also comment, I'm a moron because I didn't script the intro, so this is all improv. What is it I wanted to say? So, if you watched my reviews, you might think you know everything about how I feel, but some of my opinions have changed over time, specifically a certain scene involving Nora and a certain fight scene involving Crow and Tyrion. I have kind of almost swapped opinions on. Not quite. I don't like one that much more than I used to, but I see them a bit differently. But anyway, we're just going to talk about it now, and let's start with episode...
If we land in a stolen ship, there's no way the security team will let us anywhere near Ironwood.
Weiss says all this, but I guess never considers Crow could just fly over to where Ironwood is as a bird. I mean, Atlas taking their time out to stop a Corvid would be really silly. Don't give me shit about this line.
Look, I'm not even sure we should be talking to Ironwood until we know exactly what's going on with Mantle.
Because Crow didn't see what's going on with Mantle until after they got low enough, meaning he should have just flown over in the first place.
General Ironwood. He looks... tired.
See, with Maya's facial expressions, Ironwood looks no different to how he always has. If this was animated in 2D or even good 3D, they could sell this scene. So they could animate his face or his eyes in a particular way. And if they're trying to make it seem like Ironwood is putting on a facade to look better for public, how can RWBY and Yang tell that he's secretly tired? Shouldn't it be Crow, the guy who personally knows Ironwood, unlike these two, and has interacted with him many, many times in the past, who points it out, or even Oscar, who is supposed to be melding with Ozpin and getting his memories? I feel like this dialogue would fit Crow and Oscar better. It'd both make sense for their characters and serve a secondary purpose of reminding people that Oscar and Ozpin are supposed to be fusing souls. Because anyone who might get confused and be like, wait, how would Oscar know what Ironwood's like? He's never met him. You'd be like, oh wait, yeah, because of Ozpin. They kind of gloss over where they park their ship. I mean, it's not a small ship, they just cut from air to land. It's kind of funny. This Faunus guitarist isn't the smartest guy. He's playing music for money, I'd assume, but he has nowhere for them to throw money into. I don't know, maybe this is how homeless people are like outside of Australia, but I've always seen people doing this with like a hat or an open guitar case or something for you to put the money into. And heck, having one of those there and having it be completely empty would be a nice little bit of small world building about the racism in this general area. Hey look, it's the missing heiress of the Shanidas Company. Nah, I'll focus on this girl that broke a guy's leg one time nearly a year ago. I get that I might want to focus on Yang, but not if Weiss is right there. Nobody in fact seems to notice Weiss is there at all. Aside from Pietro, and his dumbass still needed a fucking light year to figure it out. What do you mean light years don't measure a distance? Also, she happens to wear her fucking family logo on her back! Then again, maybe this is a man drone and the guy behind it is just a really horny virgin. Why is he a fucking assaults a guy? Nearly outright murders him for calling Blake a stupid faunus? Seriously? Why did you forget that to activate Aura you have to be constantly concentrating or whatever shit Ren said? This guy should be dead. He should just be fucking dead. And why? Because he called her a stupid faunus. I could call anyone on the street a stupid human, or stupid African American, or stupid person with a different amount of melanin in their skin than me. Those are all equivalent to calling Blake a stupid faunus. He didn't even have an offensive inflection. He should have said something like stupid faunus in a really demeaning way, like he was a racist bastard who tried to avoid actually using racist terms in public. They do exist. Most racists don't out and out scream the N-word in public. But also, why didn't he use an actual racial slur? Like, I don't know, anything derogatory towards animal parts? You know, like how Frieza calls Saiyans monkeys, or how the Eldar call humans Monkai, because subtlety, or more on the nose, how the Imperium of Man calls all non-humans Xenos, or how Firebenders and Avatar call Earthbenders dirt people. These terms aren't offensive in real life, except maybe monkeys. I can see if you say that to group of African Americans in a really demeaning way, I guess you could say that's offensive. As long as in the show there's context in the origin of the term, the common usage, and the way it's used by people that make it seem offensive, it can work. Faunus can't possibly be a slur, because it's literally the name of the entire species that other faunus and humans use normally. If he had said stupid people like you instead of stupid faunus like you, it wouldn't change the meaning of the phrase at all. If Blake was a human, he'd just say stupid people, and it wouldn't be seen as anything too bad. It really seems like Weiss is just getting offended on Blake's behalf while Blake didn't care. And Weiss's response is a bit much. Coming from someone who had to deal with a lot of racism as a primary school student, I find it extremely petty to physically assault someone because of racial slurs, or in this case, just pointing out someone's race is not human, or someone's race is not the same as them. I've always considered making something physical from verbal confrontation to be very childish, unless the context is specific. For instance, if someone just lost their father and that was used against them in a verbal way to mock them, then I can understand if someone's not thinking straight and decides to beat their fucking asshole's ass. English. Or if Blake was particularly on edge at the time, but it was Weiss who, yes, is on edge, but is extremely calm in this moment, and still tries to murder him. Despite Weiss supposedly being on edge, she's very controlled. This isn't even like Yang in Volume 5 punching a guy for so much as trying to touch her hair, because not only is that very consistent with her character, it was him specifically trying to touch her, and it's her specifically. This wasn't her protecting someone else from, oh, someone did something. It would be fittingly cringy if Weiss's next line was, "Get more woke, you douche." I get that all she did was lift him several meters into the air and drop him to an open dumpster, but no buts, that's wrong to do. When Penny did it to Ruby, it was a bit more understandable. Penny's a robot and doesn't understand how inappropriate it is. Ruby also had ample time to activate her aura. Weiss just threw a drunk man into the air and allowed gravity to drop him into the dumpster. That could have easily been full of broken glass, dirty syringes, or other things you don't want to free fall into. Also, this is not at all like Yang kicking that drone. That drone is not a living thing. Also, the guy remains motionless after he hits the dumpster, so if future episodes didn't show him alive, this would be a lot darker. I like to consider the fact they chose specifically a faunus to leave Pietro's workshop to be a sign of good world building. Considering the supposedly racist nature of Atlas towards faunus, a faunus themselves getting a cybernetic arm from Pietro, who is from Atlas, helps to imply that he's not a racist towards them without making it explicitly clear. Positives! I point them out! This is a 100% me thing, but I am extremely distracted by this whale. If Ironwood is paranoid about his army getting hacked, why does he still employ robot fighters? It would be extremely funny if a truck came plowing down one of these roads and flattened everyone. They'd probably survive if they had time to activate their auras, but it'd be funny. How in the mother of fuck did these saber-toothed Grimm get into the city? I get the Mantle's a total fucking shithole, but do you think Ironwood will put up some good defenses? He is actually trying to keep them safe as well as Atlas. You know, it's hard to say he doesn't have the Lien to make a good enough defense, because look at that air fleet! Nora seems unsurprised that the city defenses don't do much, but that should be surprising. Ironwood's trying to maintain order! Ironwood only condemns Mantle to the end. At the end, these defenses should be solid right now, not shit. Speaking of budgets, why hasn't he upgraded the Elysian mechs? These guys are literally models from 2 years ago. If you look at the timeline I put together for the show, watch that video to get a better understanding of the hell I went through for you guys. It's been 2 years since the fall of Beacon, and these models were made a decent amount of time prior to the fall. That's a really fucking long time! That Ironwood should have spent upgrading his mechs. I assume with there being no paladins here, that just means they were discontinued after, you know, that makes sense. But why haven't these been improved? They're shit. And it's because they're shit I have to wonder where the Huntsmen of Mantle are. I refuse to believe that Penny is the only protector of Mantle. Or at least the only Huntsman in Mantle. Like, there wouldn't be a single Huntsman who tried to follow the Grimm this deep into the city. Let's propose that since these Grimm arrived, the Grimm have been fighting Huntsman and Penny on the outskirts trying to get in. And let's just say the alarm only went off when they actually broke into the city. Now, if we're to say that they're a why would they send Penny to deal with the Grimm further in the city? On paper, I guess it makes sense. She's probably the strongest huntsman, can fly, and can take them out quick. But if we think about it, her being the strongest is exactly why she has to stay on the outskirts in the hypothetical situation. If you don't know, the hypothetical I'm bringing up is the reason that these Grimm got in is because there's a horde trying to get in, and they couldn't stop all of them from getting in. And the they being huntsmen and soldiers. Now, Penny has a billion swords that can fire lasers and can fly. So, why would she go to take out 30 Grimm that broke through the defenses, as opposed to making sure more don't go through? If she goes off, the Grimm suddenly don't have to deal with a flying, laser-shooting, massive area of effects death machine. While if she stays there, they could just send some troopers or some huntsmen into the city to deal with the Grimm. Wouldn't really bother the defenses if a couple huntsmen or soldiers left because Penny. Keep in mind, I'm being generous with this hypothetical, because if there's no Horde trying to get in at all, then why aren't every single Huntsman there trying to deal with this problem? Or at least, how did they get in? I refuse to believe Ironwood isn't smart enough to hire some Huntsmen to protect Mantle, by the way. Or that any of the civilians aren't smart enough to hire Huntsmen. Civilians can hire Huntsmen too. Or that the Huntsmen aren't duty-bound enough to choose to stay for free. Keep in mind, Atlas's Huntsmen and military schools are the same thing. Every Huntsman in Atlas is also military personnel and thus should stay. And Ironwood recalled everything back, and I doubt Iron was going to keep a majority of the Huntsmen in Atlas because of the giant fucking air fleet! This just doesn't make any sense, except to get Penny on her own so RWBY can go wow, and give us a first episode fight scene, even though the really good first episode of Volume 5 didn't have one and still got everyone's approval. And this fight scene is easily the worst of any first episode fight. The Volume 1 fight, really appealing to the eye. The Volume 2 fight, so over the top silly that everyone loved it. The Volume 3 fight, absolute tripe, but at least the context made sense. Volume 4 fight, a lot of issues involving animation errors and such, but at least was a bit different to the normal fare. And the Volume 6 fight, well, it was shit, but it wasn't nearly as bad as this. This fight is pretty much pointless in-universe, but as a point out-of-universe, so it happened. Brilliant writing. Don't write events that would lead to what you want. Bend over backwards and ignore your internal logic to achieve it. Speaking of the fight though, even though RWBY is supposed to be the impulsive one, and nothing has happened that would alter the aspect of a character since Volume 4, and hopefully anything that might have actually affected her has not been shown. It's a good thing she can just flick the switch in her brain to turn off her character like Vampires and Vampires Diaries. Blah, 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 blah. I've watched that show, it exists. Here's Ren and Nora. Everyone's vanished except John. Everyone just sort of vanishes between shots, disappearing and reappearing whenever they're necessary for a scene. Instead of putting in the effort to animate them in the background, they just vanish. We don't get to see them spreading out to fight or anything either. Lazy, incompetent animation. Also, Crow here is just firing at stuff off screen instead of just going after with his sword, and now and then he vanishes. Blake also teleports in this shot. Here, she's clearly in front of the laser. But in the next shot, the angle of the cut and the grim means the laser beam should have cleaved Blake in half too. If we were to see a camera shot from the angle of the cut, it'd be looking at the floor. Penny's return. Okay, there are some problems with this. I'll go over them in needless amounts of detail. Number 1. RWBY's response. RWBY barely responds to a return of this scene. She just sort of accepts it immediately. Seriously, one of her bestest friends who she saw die pretty fucking brutally and didn't exactly have time to mourn over when it happened because Bird has just come back. There should have been a bit more of an emotional response. She cried in Volume 3, but here, where she has even more time to process things, she almost immediately goes into fun, goofy hijinks mode when Penny lands and tackles her. To be fair though, this is more of a fault of Penny. But there's still very little time to feel the emotion of Penny coming back. And the only people who would feel the emotion are those who love Penny so much that they get the same response if she walked around the corner like,
Appreciate movie post. Baby got Ixie as we're going and this is coming positive emotions now.
Like seconds after Penny shows up, and it seems like something emotional might happen, we immediately get a visual gag, then some slapstick, then RWBY tries to get into an emotional moment again, and then she gets cut off and we get another gag. To be fair, the gag did make me laugh, and also the shot of Penny actually showing up is really nice. 2. There are no personal consequences. Now, I've seen people say all the consequences of Penny's death are gone, but that's technically not true. I'll go more into this with the whole Fall of Beacon related thing. Anyway, the issue is there are very little personal consequences. Not all things need them, mind you. If something's meant to feel disconnected or on a grander scale than a personal thing, it's fine to limit it to world consequences, but that doesn't imply to a character death. RWBY cried a little in Volume 3, but afterwards she showed almost no recognition of Penny's death aside from this negative 10 out of 10 piece of fuck scene from Volume 5 that was absolutely terrible. The issue with that big time skip between Volumes 3 and 4 was how it would treat RWBY's response to Penny and Pyrrha's death. Now, ignoring that the drama of Penny's death was likely going to be drowned out by Pyrrha's death, it left two primary ways of dealing with her response, and neither were great. Either RWBY would completely deal with her mourning off screen, which is not fulfilling to a viewer and makes RWBY feel like an exponentially shallower character, and whatever change she went through, if at all, would feel more like inconsistent, incoherent writing than real growth. Or they'd have the issue persist to the current point in the timeline, but the problem there would be there's 3 ways to look at it if they continued her mourning over. Either she completely ignored the grief over her death between volumes and only started to remember at Volume 4, or she would have been grieving the whole time and any progress she'd made over the course of the time skip wouldn't be seen and known by the viewer, meaning we see her in a completely new state of mourning. Or she would have been grieving the whole time and made no progress on dealing with the grief, which makes all of her friends seem like worthless cunts. 3. Penny has not changed at all. A lot of people tout RWBY as either a show with amazing subtle character development, don't laugh, I've seen people say that, or they say it has no character development whatsoever, and characters just flick switches in their brains at times specifically chosen to trick the viewer into thinking some development has happened. You can guess what camp I sit in. But Penny here fucking screams with that problem. Penny has not changed at all, leading me to believe that over the time it took between her being rebuilt and when Volume 7 occurred, nothing at all happened that would change her. Also, she was completely unaffected by literally fucking dying in a vicious way that if it were done to a human would have instantly given the show an R18 rating. And it's not that she forgot that happened, she clearly remembers RWBY somehow. She just acts the exact same, that way being, well, Penny's pretty much just a slightly less intelligent Nora, their hair is even the same colour. Also, she completely remembers everything, and as someone without any prior knowledge would have watched this scene, it's plain more like she just went on a trip to Tibet for a while instead of being fucking dead. But she's better later in the volume, she is. 4. Why is she the protector of Mantle? Let's consider the moments before the fall of Beacon. Cinder's speech pegs Penny as being part of a synthetic army, and she then asks the rhetorical question of why Penny is disguised as a little girl, and then outright makes the claim that Ironwood has infiltrated Vale with armed forces. Is it a really good idea to make the protector of Mantle the literal poster girl for an implied attempted infiltration and invasion on Atlas's part? This wasn't a good idea. I get that some people in Mantle might be fine with this, but they'd have to be a bunch of absolute cunts to think it's just okay for Atlas to do that. And the other way to look at it is to say that Cinder's speech didn't sway the public at all, of which would make this entire sequence seem meaningless and make an already incompetent looking villain seem like she has even less of a clue. And to say that maybe the part where she was digging at Atlas didn't change anything but the rest did, really the only other part of that speech is her saying that Ozpin is a shitty headmaster and Huntsman are dicks, so I doubt that would have made enough panic to cause Grimm. But also, yes, I should defend this as well, because there are people saying now the fall of Beacon is pointless, because Penny's back. And the people who want to say that Penny's back so the fall of Beacon was meaningless, what? Penny dying does not get rid of the consequences of the fall of Beacon. Let's see. What happened as a result of the fall of Beacon? Global communications is lost, RWBY finds out about a Silver Eyes, Beacon becomes uninhabitable as the Wyvern Grimm attracts more Grimm to the city. Ozpin dies, Pyrrha dies, Roman dies. Neo vanishes for a long period of time. Ironwood becomes paranoid over his army being hacked. Team Coffee leave Beacon, which matters because of that book they made that I don't want to read. Blake ran away and went to Menagerie. Weiss was brought home by her father, and Cinder got the full maiden power. Unfortunately. These are all real consequences that have a bit of an impact in the later volumes. In fact, Penny's death is not a consequence of the fall of Beacon, it is a catalyst. It is the catalyst. Penny coming back does not undo any of the consequences of the fall of Beacon. All this does undo is one of the things that caused the fall, which doesn't undo the fact that the fall happened, because that's not how science works. It's the one death that undoing makes perfect sense for, because she's a robot.
I have absolutely no idea who that child was. Is she important somehow?
No, Maria, as a character, she's not that important. She was really just a prop for the plot to move along.
That was unexpected.
Nope, no, that wasn't unexpected at all. Even if people didn't immediately see it coming the moment Volume 5 had them say they were going Atlas, people immediately saw it coming once Pietro brought up his supposed daughter. Somehow, Ren's spider senses are tingling, but Blake isn't hearing anything despite her faunus super hearing. And for some reason, these dickheads also leave Crow to last when it comes to capturing everyone, even though that's the worst thing to do. I mean, it doesn't end up fucking them over, but Crow is the one they should have gotten first. Crow also doesn't immediately turn into a bird to get out. I get that he might want to keep it secret, but he could just play it off as his semblance. Blake also doesn't use her semblance to bounce out of there, given she fucking teleports when she does it, at least nowadays she does. Clover is staring straight at RWBY's nethers. I love how Maria just straight ditches them. Bye, Maria, hope you get to do something later in the volume. Oh, wait.
Running with the Aesops? Ironwood must really have a bone to pick with you.
They're not that big of a deal.
Weiss is right, the Aesops are total bitches in the end. Gotta say, I like how this shot gives Atlas a real sense of scale. It makes Atlas look awesome, even though it's a shithole. Right, so here is where pretty much the biggest thing with our protagonist this volume is established. No matter what good intentions Ironwood has, no matter how much he trusts them, no matter how justified any of his choices are, they go in expecting to disagree with him, and they never trust him throughout the whole volume. Now, people say this volume is meant to show two sides of a moral debate without siding with either one as superior. The problem is, if you actually read into it with that sort of mindset, you'll notice it doesn't do that. It's very obvious this volume is advocating Team RWBY as being right over Ironwood, While characters are constantly going over how they support RWBY and how they oppose Ironwood, nobody ever advocates for Ironwood's side. His own troops don't support his outlook beyond orders, and that's fine, but at least have one of them agree to this kind of a debate. There isn't anyone who goes, I understand why Ironwood is doing what he's doing when he makes his rash choices or when he makes his hard choices. Everyone is like, Ironwood's wrong, or Ironwood's wrong, but I have to be on his side. So if you think this volume is about who's actually in the right, it's not. It's obviously portraying Ironwood as straight up wrong, which is what everyone expected. I don't think it's a stretch to say that at least 75% of the audience expected Ironwood to become an antagonistic force at one point in the volume. And it would have been more surprising if Ironwood wasn't. And you know, maybe if a single character was there for him, and gave him someone who could personally rely on, maybe then he'd be a bit more emotionally stable. But all of the people that work for him disagree with him to an extent. The only one that might not is Harriet, who also never really talks to him. You can't you just have one character who's like, you know, I understand the problems, but I agree with Ironwood. It's all I don't agree, but I gotta work for him. RWBY specifically says she wants to be careful with what they're saying, and I'll bring this up later in relation to Yang, but RWBY and co. are lying to Ironwood throughout the entire volume, while he's the one telling them all the truth. Real great protagonists.
It is so good to see all of you.
Our reception didn't really convey that.
Yang seems to think Ironwood has it out for them or something, or she has reason to distrust him, but I'm fairly certain Ironwood didn't know they were coming when this happened. Like, they flew in on a stolen ship and were apprehended by the authorities. Is that not a normal thing? Yeah, I might have committed Grand Theft Auto, but the police chief is my mate, so why are you cops being so mean to me? Weiss and Winter are legitimately better sisters in this volume than RWBY and Yang.
But I cannot believe that you allowed this to happen, Crow.
You try stopping these kids when they have their minds set on something.
And that's the extent of Winter and Crow's interactions this volume. So RWBY knows for a fact that whatever plan Ironwood has can't work because Salem cannot be destroyed. Why doesn't she just tell him that? What she knows right now is Ironwood trusts him wholeheartedly, and Ironwood wants to destroy Salem with his plan, as well as the issues in Mantle are a result of Ironwood wanting to protect people. Once he finishes his plan, these issues will go away. She has no reason not to tell him, and in fact coordinating with him to determine a more efficient plan that actually has a chance of working would be a good idea, you think?
And I wanted my military here, protecting my people.
But it's not protecting them. It's making everyone hate you.
It's a price I'm willing to pay.
See, this is why Ironwood, in my eyes, is the best character in RWBY. He actually suffers consequences for his actions. He knows for a fact that his actions to protect Atlas and Mantle will make everyone hate him, but he's willing to throw away his public image for the sake of his people. Imagine if Ironwood didn't do this. Ironwood's army was not protecting Atlas and there was no dust embargo. Ironwood would be prioritizing his public image and the comfort of his people over making sure his people don't all fucking die. Do you really want a leader that cares more about his looks than about the safety of his people? Insert unfunny Trump joke. Speaking of trust, Ironwood not only does not state he thinks Ozpin was wrong, but is actively willing to trust the entire fucking world with knowledge that Ozpin didn't trust them with. You'd think Ironwood doing what Ozpin did would at least make Yang go, yeah, I'm all good in this is a good idea, considering she actively opposed Ozpin a volume ago and pretty much fucking hates him. But no, she doesn't trust him because he's willing to make his kingdom feel sad so they don't all fucking die. And yeah, you could say them being sad means Grimm will attack, but the Grimm are pretty much a non-issue anyway, and Salem fucking flies into one at the end, so I don't think everyone being happy would have stopped that Grimm from showing up. Ironwood even admits that once he reveals Salem to the world, he is willing to extend his troops to protect other kingdoms. When Ozpin doesn't tell people, that's bad. When Ironwood does tell people, that's also bad. It seems like Yang is just more upset her friends weren't told, and this could be a character flaw with Yang, but it's never brought up. Never called out for it. What is wrong with Penny's eyes? People are saying Ironwood is a heartless bastard, yet here he's clearly ecstatic to see his old friend, and when he learns his friend isn't okay, he's rightfully concerned about him. Oh, and then RWBY lies to him about the well-being of his friend. RWBY then compounds this problem by literally using the exact same lie Ozpin did.
All the questions were used up already.
And when Yang does call her out for lying, nothing comes of it. RWBY pretty much just tells her sister to go shove a vibrating metal arm up her clit, and Yang just says, okay, but I'd rather do it with a cat. I just do love how Team RWBY take all the trust Ironwood has in them and spits it back in his face. Ironwood straight up tells RWBY that he's trusting her hastily thrown together group to protect a vitally important relic more than his giant fuck-off armada. Heck, Ironwood is the one who wants to work together, while Team RWBY are the ones that don't trust him and don't want to work with him. Maro is literally the best. This hug is also the best. Ironwood is just really happy to see his friend. A friend that last we saw, Ironwood was willing to believe his friend was going to attack him. And now he's hugging him because he's just happy to see him again.
As the most well-funded school on Remnant, every team at Atlas Academy gets their own room.
What are you talking about, Penny? Beacon did exactly the same thing. You'd think the most well-funded campus in the world would have better accommodations than literally the only other campus we know anything about. We really don't know shit about Haven.
It'll be just like Beacon again!
It'll be just like Beacon again, the place where you got violently dismembered. You know, I wonder why she didn't ask where Pyrrha is. You know, the chick who offed her. Imagine she did, and they were like, she dead, and Penny's response was, good, fucking bitch. I kinda love this scene with Watts because it's entertaining, but also, it's gonna pretty clearly make him stand out. All this crazy stuff is happening around Watts. If you wanted to blend in, maybe he just do a normal. I don't know, I have trouble doing a normal. But you know what? I don't care, because I like this scene, and I like Tyrion and Watts as a team. Honestly, this end bit's the best part of the episode. I approve. Why do Team RWBY and Juniper have their full names here, but then the Aesops don't? I refuse to believe Mia Tanasta and Kukia Moores could fit in these boxes. Although they do show that RWBY doesn't have Crescent Rose in it, so I guess they were just really excited for new clothes. And let's talk about these outfits. They're not winter clothes. First off, none of them look like winter. Secondly, none of them have any headwear. And for some reason, Blake even cut her hair. Even though, like, having more hair makes you warmer. I could comment on how I feel about her haircut, but I'm very biased on preferring longer hair, so unimportant. Now let's look at what they're all wearing. RWBY here is wearing a pair of shorts under her skirt, with what looks like some mesh over her thighs, which is not very good for the cold. Although maybe something is covering it, but it does kind of look like a mesh to me. I don't know. There are some belts on her thighs, which is kind of really anime, and I love it. She has exposed fingers on her gloves, and her neck is exposed. Now on the upside, she does have her boob window taken away, which is good. So RWBY is dressed subpar, and a lot of Weiss's outfit isn't awful, but her shoulders and arms look like they might be okay, and this giant dress probably isn't the worst. But then her chest is exposed, and so are her fucking thighs. Blake is wearing a catsuit, which I think is fittingly fine because those are alright for the cold. But once again, her hands are exposed, and the real issue here is that she cut her fucking hair. Also, she's not covering her ears, and sometimes she unzips her sleeves. Yang gets big points for having a jacket that's woolly on the inside, and also a metal arm that probably doesn't need to be covered. But then she's got a massive cleavage section here, her right leg for some reason has an exposed thigh, her left arm is completely uncovered whenever Ember Celica isn't deployed, and her fingers are exposed. But at least she has a scarf. These are not good winter outfits, and I'll bring up why this is a problem later. Blake probably has the best outfit for winter, Weiss and Yang are showing off too much skin, and RWBY's problems are admittedly a bit less extreme. But it's also really fucking cold. Why does Weiss summon the arm here? I mean, you'd think this uses up more aura than just her platforms. Styling on nobody is not a good reason. I love how Gamble's shroud looks like it was crudely taped back together. As an Australian, I support Marrow's weapon, even though it's really dumb and bad. Now let's shit on Team Juniper's attire. Except John. John's only problem is that he's exposing a small portion of his upper arm. His hands are covered, the turtleneck's probably quite warm, and he looks fine. Actually, you know what? Ren's also fine. His only real issue is that his fingers are out. Aside from that, he looks quite covered. Nora then is showing off too much on the front, too much on the shoulders, but also a portion of her thighs. Nora, what are you doing? And just because I like the Aesops doesn't mean I like their clothes. They should be wearing military winter clothes, not these. Harriet's showing off almost the entirety of her arms and a big-ass portion of her legs. Marrow honestly just needs some gloves. Vine is showing off too much chest and has fingerless gloves, again with these fingerless gloves. Elm is showing off her full hands, too much on her front, and almost her entire left arm. Clover might be the worst, aside from Harriet. He just straight up, full on, has no sleeves. And Crow looks like he rolled up his sleeves. In the cold! Also, if you expect me to comment on John's hair, I'm over it. It looks dumb, but at least it's not the scabbard. At least it's not the scabbard. Why is the scabbard mounted on his arm? This is a very bad place to put it. Always put it on the hip, or maybe even on the back. I say on the back because of this video from Shadowversity that I highly recommend. It does address that there are legitimate benefits to it depending on the design of the scabbard. In John's case, because he's adventuring, I'd say a back scabbard would work, but then his scabbard is also his shield, so putting it on his hip would probably be the best. Of course, the counter argument is if the scabbard is on his arm, then if he's surprised, he can be quicker at blocking. However, drawing a sword is a quick action, and a sword can also block, while also allowing him to counterattack. I don't think I need to explain that it's easier to counterattack with a sword than with a shield. Yes, he could shield bash, but that's not as effective as sword. And this has never been a problem for him in the past as well. This would also make it harder for him to equip his Chonka-Chonk sword, as he'd have to move further to reach it, so in a pinch it'd be harder to access. Bad choice, John. Bad. And you know, the paraglider shield is really dumb, but it's charmingly dumb. Dumb boy finally adopted a landing strategy. This is not the point to bring up Bumblebee, moving along. What I will bring up here that I was going to bring up earlier, but forgot to, is that I consider the Aesops and even Team Juniper significantly better than Team RWBY. Team RWBY never have any internal conflicts with one another. Never do they confront each other on their issues or disagree. They constantly just agree and are okay with everything. They're so goody-goody and friendly that it's sickeningly boring. There's almost no banter. The most you get is maybe sometimes they'll get annoyed by RWBY being dumb, but that's it. At least it's something. But the Aesops, the people who are only colleagues and workmates, act more like friends than the actual friends do. They sometimes disagree. They poke fun at each other, but they do still care about one another. Real friends know they can poke fun and make jokes. Huand is my friend, so when he goes on a podcast with me and audibly spams RWBY hater, I'm fine with it, because if he wasn't my friend, I wouldn't be fine with it, and he also wouldn't do it if he wasn't my friend. The fact that the Aesops are willing to poke fun at one another makes them feel more like closely knit friends. Team Juniper's a bit different. They're also always supportive too, but the difference is they have so much less screen time that it's hard to get sick of it, and at least Ren does get mad. I know everyone wants their ships, but I take characters bantering and having fun over this. Here's an example of what I mean. Here's Avengers, but written like RWBY.
Brother, I am mad at you.
Hey, Matt, did you just take my prisoner?
Did I?
Yeah, I don't really appreciate that, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad.
No, it's alright. Let's just go back to the flying boat and have tea over it.
The what?
Dark, did you hack my system? Yeah, you've been lying to us. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay then.
Yeah, I also have a problem with this, but I'll overlook it. Natasha, I will kill you.
Why?
Oh my god, you're right. What am I doing? Hulk! Smash! Hulk!
It's okay, Banner. Don't get mad. Oh, okay, I'm fine now. I'm the bad guy. This is my army.
Hey guys, watch this!
Are you kidding me? Like, how boring would that be? Did you know that Bucky killed my family?
Yes, but I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know. I want to fuck Steve. Now, if you want to know why I brought up winter clothes, here.
It's freezing out here! Without heating or a projected aura, the cold of Solitas can kill you in a matter of hours.
In a matter of hours, the cold can kill you. Without an aura. Now, the general response is, I doubt it takes much effort to keep an aura up for that long, even though it takes conscious effort to do so, according to Ryland. That's actually how his name is spelled, trust me, I'm Asian. The issue is, what if, say, you get into a fight and your aura is dropped to 1%, or even your aura's broken? Uh-oh, how unfortunate. Once your aura's gone, you're fucked. You think just wearing a little warmer clothes would be better? Like, why would they not just wear winter clothes? That means you have one extra barrier of protection. It's not really going to be a problem if you just wear some warmer clothes. Here, Yang asked RWBY if they should keep the secret, and is like, should they tell the truth? And RWBY's like, nah, I don't trust him, we shouldn't. And Yang's like, okay. Seriously? You hypocritical bitch! Remember when I said there's no conflict between them? Well, this should have been where it happened. Or at least somewhere in this volume, this issue should have been brought up more. Oh, well, you can't do that, because Yang is surgically attached to Blake this volume and can't have a one-on-one chat with anyone. So Blake has to be there because of boats, and Blake is on RWBY's side. They can't possibly have Yang and Blake in conflict, or have Blake just flick to Yang's side over RWBY's because one of them has a better set of ha-has. That'd make Blake look bad. Well, shit. We can't have Blake and Yang argue, and we can't have them not be in a scene together. Looks like we might as well just not do anything at all. So this shot here did actually give me hope that RWBY would feel bad about lying and would come clean out of guilt. But no, RWBY never tells the truth, Oscar does it for her. Legitimately, Clover and Crow have fantastic chemistry. Crow pushing Clover away while he remains supportive. It's great, I love it. I was trying to clap, but I ended up hitting my fingers against each other instead, and it fucked up. Oh, why does Ren have his knife on his shoulder? Does he ever use that this volume? I don't recall. I'll have to pay attention to his very minimal fights. I'm glad he has it though. That's a very nice attention to detail, and I missed. Probably because Ren gets almost no screen time, but hey, I do like it. I actually think Ren's redesign is one of my favorites. Although I have warmed up to RWBY's because it's pretty much the same as the Volume 4 design, but I kind of like the spikier hair.
I like your outfit too.
See, if this was Team RWBY, then Nora would have been like, thank you! And it wouldn't be funny or charming like this. You know, I love Marrow, but I kinda wish Blake and Weiss had a proper scene together here. I guess even he knew they couldn't have a Blake scene without Yang, so he just didn't let it happen. I mean, I like this contribution, but I wish he wasn't immediately like, oh, by the way, there's a hole in the wall, that's a lot cooler, right? Why did I have to pause on this frame? It just looks wrong. Am I the only one who thinks this wall punch looks weak? Like, the moment she touches it, it shatters. Not when she actually pushes forward, it just breaks before her punch goes all the way and before she grunts, and it looks weak as hell. These glory hole grim bleed. That's new to my knowledge. I'm not complaining, I think it's a nice touch, but I don't remember that in previous Grim. So the way Yang's punches work with the grenades kind of confirms that her punching strength isn't actually that high. I started noticing more in Volume 6 that very little of the force Yang punches with comes from her physical strength. Because whenever she punches, the Embaselica shot that follows it completely pushes back her momentum. So she punches with less force than a shotgun, and in RWBY, that's pretty silly. Like, even with her semblance in Volume 6, she lays into Adam, but then a single shot from Embaselica is so powerful, it overpowers the momentum of her punch and blows her arm backwards. Of all the upgrades, I think this is one of the better ones. It's not exactly what I say is a mega hype thing. Speaking of not mega hype though, Ruby's side spinning is moronic. Why would she ever need it? Would it actually be less efficient to continue with her momentum and spin her whole body? You know, like how she does several times prior? I don't recall this edition ever being used again in the volume, at least not in a way that couldn't be done by just rotating the weapon in her hands. Seriously, I'm being honest, if you think this is awesome as fuck and hype as shit, I would love an explanation, because I just don't understand. Speaking of not hype, I'm sorry Marrow, but that's dumb. The gun looks cool, and as an Australian, I can't hate his weapon, it's just psychologically not possible, and no, this is not an unrealistic size for a boomerang, some boomerangs are nearly 200 centimeters. Embrace the metric system, motherfucker! I just think it's stupid. His semblance is really cool, but it does bring up some problems in the future. The Black Panther-esque shotwave John uses is kind of cool. Honestly, John's weapon upgrades might be my favorites, and Ren's probably my second favorite. I was critical of them, but I can definitely see these being used for very inventive fights in the future. It at least helps massively with his maneuverability, although if anyone needed help with that, Ren probably wasn't one of them. At least, whenever Juniper do get into a fight, it might be inventive. I mean, they have like 2 battles this whole volume. I don't think Magnahild is any different than it used to be, but that's okay. This weapon has always been stupid, and I mean that in the best way. Magnahild is one of my favorite weapons in the whole series. It's awesome. Seriously, Crow, your aim is that bad? Why don't you just run up and give it a solid whacking? Speaking of stupid weapons that I love, my favorite new weapon by far this volume is Clover's Kingfisher. And yes, it has no gun, but I'm okay with that. I love this thing. Even though it's so dumb, it's so entertaining to watch in action. I just realized that I don't think Crow turns into a bird once this volume. I hope I'm misremembering that. Marrow is great. That is all. This intro would have been a lot more badass if we didn't see it earlier. This fight scene is really cool, and it makes Marrow's boomerang legitimately look badass. Honestly, I like this. This fight is well animated, well choreographed, and it's quite refreshing seeing new characters fighting. And you know, at least in this case, a Grim getting jobbed is perfectly acceptable, because it's taking on the 5 greatest huntsmen in the entire kingdom. Oh, I don't know if Winter's one of the greats too, and Penny doesn't count. How does Clover manage to stand on the air, though? He just turns off physics. Good luck indeed if that was, like, the gravity dust affecting this one area exclusively. I also kind of like Ruby grabbing this before Harriet can. It feels like a real Ruby move. Elm carrying Ruby on her shoulder is adorable, and I love it. Legitimately, this would be better if, instead of a loud noise, they just had Tyrion appear out of nowhere between the light flickers. Tyrion is great though, and I feel bad criticizing anything relating to him. Yes, I know about that, we'll get there! Of all the episodes we talked about today, this probably is my favorite. It's charming, it's refreshing seeing Team RWBY interact with new characters. Honestly, this episode is really running just on the charm for me. I love this one compared to some of the others. I do like John fawning over not how strong or skilled the Aesops are, but rather the quality of their teamwork. And I like Clover's answer. And I like Marrow interacting with Elm. I don't know if I like how charming this scene is, or if I'm freaked out by Nora's face. I love how I just said episode 3 is my favorite of these 4, and then I start this one by just saying things I like. This is cute though. Kinda wish John and Clover interacted more, honestly. I feel like there could have been something interesting there. Then again, Crow's sword is thicker, so it looks better when impaling someone. Oh hey look, them actually having some banter, and I kind of like them, both acknowledging that they only explored the boring parts, RWBY Volumes 5 and 6, and Ruby scoffing at the idea of them almost dying. I mean, it's not a good thing, but it definitely is true. Marrow, you are great. It's a bit strange that Forrest's last name isn't listed. Like, imagine if his name was just generic, like James. Oh my god! Someone killed Ironwood, and one of my best friends! I like that Ironwood actively listens to and processes John's criticism, and then acknowledges it, especially when John acts a bit intimidated when he realized what he said, and Ironwood's like, no, you're right. It's alright, mate. Why does Jock start talking before the doors open? I legitimately like Ironwood pretty much telling Jock to get fucked, because if he lays a hand on Weiss, it's not just the 18-year-old girl that's going to be laying him out. And I like how Jock follows with a more mental attack, trying to guilt trip her. I feel Shipper screaming over how it's Blake holding Weiss's hand, and I love it. Wow, Winter, smooth move just leaving your sister to deal with Daddy Dearest. Then again, it would have been weird if she just drove past and pulled Weiss into the vehicle, but it'd also be funny. Kinda like Penny here. You see, moments like this make me glad they brought Penny back. She's doing all the things I expect Nora to do, but she does them better. Yeah, I fucking said it. Come at me. Ironwood and Winter's reactions here are priceless. This volume legitimately makes me like Penny more than the first 3 volumes ever did. I feel like if she had died here, I would have honestly cared more. Part of that might be that she and Winter bounce off each other extremely well, and oh no, she's not with Winter anymore by the end. These licenses are so meaningless, even the protagonists realize they mean absolutely nothing at this point. Wait, these are all their new designs. I really would find it hilarious that Ironwood would be like, wait, before you guys go out on the mission, make sure you get really nice photos taken. The fuck? Did it just come apart at the ball joint? Maybe it's universal joint, I don't know. We've only ever seen it come apart at the connection point, which makes sense. Why would it detach from the elbow? Wouldn't that just make it so it's easier to pull apart and thus weaker than it would be otherwise? This feels like a bad design choice. While I understand how someone would consider this scene cringe as fuck, I legitimately care more about this meme than any other meme in the world. You know, aside from Transformers being offline by a cosmically powered Starscream, that is my favorite meme. Chris McFeely is awesome. Go fucking watch him. Transformers fans. Crow's conversation with RWBY is legitimately the first time in fucking ages they felt like family. The way they talk about Summer though makes me concerned they want to bring her back sometime in the future. Please don't! Everyone expects it! I'm also very glad that no one's saying, oh, Summer is with Salem now. I'm glad that they just killed that theory. This is probably the cutest RWBY has been since Volume 3. Elm is also the best, and I will have no arguments. I would ask how Elm knows exactly what hunch he's going to slap when doing this so haphazardly and not looking. But fuck you, it's Elm. Although it would be hilarious if she landed on a mission that said cleaning the toilet so people don't fret over not being able to shit in peace, thus luring Grimm. Whitley. I have things to say, but this is not the time.
What if I said you could have your cake and eat it too?
How the fuck did Watts make that not sound cringy? Okay, well, that was ending it on saying things I liked. So I liked that episode too, I guess. Funnily enough, this episode is almost entirely filler. The only things in it that are necessary are the Jacques scenes, both of which could have easily been put in other episodes. But because it's so meaningless, nothing happens that bothers me, honestly. Anyway, that's all for this part. I hope you guys enjoyed. I knew I said I'd make an amendments for Volume 6, but I'm too fucking lazy. I did compile everything. I was just too lazy to get it done. I might still. But I'll try to register the criticism I get for this video and this series this time. I'll try. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a lovely day. Please don't die. And don't get angry in the comments over fucking RWBY. I complimented it enough, okay?
You guys just mean!